Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Peacemaker. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up, in the drive to, go kill the cow. And so there's a conversation back and forth between Adebayo, or rather lack thereof a conversation between Adebayo and Peacemaker, because Chris doesn't want to listen to it, and so it turns into the most childish thing ever, the farting back and forth. And I love that because he is who he is, Vigilante joining it, because it's like, oh, my BFF's doing it, and you're just doing it back and forth. I even love the whole point where like he's chomping on and doing it too. But she's like, I'm trying to apologize. And she's like, it is kind of messed up that it's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I sent you to prison and stuff like that. But it's like, for her, it's like, it's not the worst. I can't believe I'm getting judged here because I, kind of accidentally framed you and, was planning on sending you to jail. But it's like, compared to everyone on this team being a murderer. And he's like, yeah, but like, once again, justifying what he does. He's like, ever since his brother died, he made a vow that no death would ever be meaningless. Like, so if someone dies for the purpose of eventually leading to peace, then that's fine. Like, he, keeps trying to justify any death. And so, but I love that what pissed Vigilante off the most is like, man, we had a good thing going. We just, we just went through the whole thing of killing Vigilante's dad, and it was so badass. And then we had this whole farting thing going on, and he kind of had to ruin that Adebayo. Like, it's like this thing between me and my best friend, my first best friend, Peacemaker, then my second best friend, Eagerly, and my fifth best friend, Adebayo, which I'm immediately like, okay, so I'm assuming, ranking-wise, I'm assuming number 3 is John, number 4 is Harcourt, unless it's John, 4 isn't Harcourt, and it's someone else, or I'd assume because he made that whole point that it's like, oh, him and John have a new thing, and it's like, it's not the same as him and Chris, but he still likes it, so I'm assuming they have to be 3 and 4, John and Harcourt, respectfully. Granted, it could be, maybe not that's the case, but either way. So the time has come to go after the cow. Cool, so what are we going to do? And it's like, all right, there's a number of helmets here. We're going to have to utilize them. There's the one that gives everyone in a mile radius scabies except for the person wearing it. It's like, why do you still have that? I'm also super disappointed we didn't actually use it. The fact is like, why are you keeping it around? But why did you also not use it? You should have used it. Like, no one used it. They used the God, what was it? The one that ends up, Human Torpedo. The Human Torpedo, the Sonic Boom. They couldn't use the other underwater one because it doesn't matter right now. Oh my God, I'm skipping over once again, the continued superhero shit talking, because it's like, okay, we could do the whole lowering it down, like using like a pulley or like rope to kind of lower it down, like, oh, like Green Arrow. No, not like Green Arrow, that he goes to Brony conventions and blah, blah, blah. And then she's just like, he literally has something to say about every single superhero. Like, where does he come up with this? And even John's like, no, I've heard that same thing about Green Arrow, so it's super true. But he's like, I don't know, like, that might be the one true thing he's ever said. And then you have Vigilante being like, about Aquaman fucking fishes. It's like, no, that's true, obviously. So it's like, for someone to back up, be like, oh no, what he said about Green Arrow, super true. I love that. All this shit talking down about superheroes, but the Green Arrow stuff, the Aquaman stuff is like 100% true. I love that. But nevertheless, because I love how we're like, okay, we need to get the Sonic Boom helmet down there and then like fire off a couple shots and then we got it done. It's like, all right, the only best way we could do that is getting Eagly to drop it off. No, because they were originally going to use the anti-gravity helmet, because I forgot that was a thing, and that immediately got activated. And it's like, did you just say activate anti-gravity? And she's like, no. Maybe? I don't know. I didn't know it was going to be that so voice sensitive. So, cool. That's out the window. We got to turn to Eagly, which Hardcore was like, it's not going to work. And it's like, yes, trust me, Eagly's got this. You got it. And it's like, Eagly, you got it. I'm like, okay, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? Because I know he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And he didn't do it. In fact, he flew in the other direction and dropped it in the middle of the woods. I'm like, yes. So it's like, okay, cool, let's split up and look for it. So I even love the conversation between Harcourt and Adebayo was like, why are you here? She's like, I saw, why didn't you walk away from all this? She's like, yeah, I saw an eagle hugging a human, and I saw that as a sign. She's like, why don't you see that as a sign to, like, run the other direction? Adebayo pauses for a second, and she's like, fuck! I'm like, you didn't think about that? You saw it as a sign, like, oh, this is a sign to stay here. Didn't even cross your mind to think, oh, it's a sign to get the fuck out. I love that. That's so good. Like, which makes it... I love because in the grand scheme of things, it cheapens a little bit that she came alone because she thought of it as a sign, but it's because she didn't think about it on the flip side of maybe it was a sign to get the fuck out, but she's here regardless. So I love that. I'd skipped over it, but I love that she had called her mom and it's like, cool, can you like call in a Justice League or something? She's like, no, mom, I'm not kidding, because I guess it's like, well, because we know Amanda Waller like is kind of like bleh towards the Justice League sometimes. At least my experience, I'm not well versed in the comics, so I think it's always like a means to an end, like you serve her purpose, but she always knows like these are power, because I remember from the Justice League cartoon, that was always a thing, and she was scared of like, you are beings of too much power. There's too many superheroes, you got that watchtower in space, it's like, no, you got too much. So she would always try to like, she wanted there to be some balance to that power. That there'd be somebody to kind of hold them accountable. So I wonder, is it kind of the same thing in this continuity where she's like, man, fuck the Justice League. You really want me to call them? It's like, I don't, we know she does call them at the end, but we'll get to that later. So they kind of were handling this on their own because they had no idea when backup was going to arrive. So... Oh yeah, the whole thing about sarcasm too, of like, you guys need to be a little more clear when you're being sarcastic and stuff like that. I even love that the post credits like plays into that. But other than all of that, the conversation about like, between John and Vigilante. What was the whole thing about like, oh no, all I saw was like some ants and stuff like that. He's like, why would I care about ants? I don't know. You need to be more specific. Like, we're looking for this helmet. Why should I have to be specific? Ants. It's like, there's more, their most important thing in life. It's like, what about, fish? It's like, dude, there's way more ants than fish. You really? It's like, yes. I mean, at least in one place. It's like, this whole conversation is confusing me. He's like, yes, I'm getting confused by this fucking conversation too. I'm like, oh, I love you, Vigilante. Oh, you're my favorite idiot. Oh, you're one of my favorite idiots. You non-emotion having idiot. I love you. He is the most lovable idiot. I love it so much, dude. Then you have Chris, who's tripping and seeing his dad, and his dad's like, go ahead and shoot me. Like, oh, why don't you use your big pistol, cum stain? He's like, because I know that you're just a manifestation in my head, so I'm not going to use the gun just to attract the butterflies. And he's like, oh, almost got you. He's like, no, you didn't almost trick me, you ball sack. And uses the poison dart, and he's like, ooh, how'd you like that? And then his dad dies again. He's like, yeah, thanks for coming, Ghost, so I could kill you again. And Amelia's like, what are you doing? And he's like, what? Nothing. Luckily found the helmet. Killed one of the butterflies and ended up giving it to John. And John's like, wait, why is this white? He's like, I had to wash it. He's like, why'd you have to wash it? It's like, well, I talk about, the more not glamorous side of like, killing, because like, you get so caught up in like the white cloud of like kicking ass, but it's like, there's a downside of like people when they die defecate themselves. And he's like, so this is diarrhea? He's like, no, it's not diarrhea. All I said was it was shit. But is it diarrhea? He's like, yes, it's diarrhea. And I was like, oh. So he had no choice. And, he has to pretend to be one of those people. And I love that Larry stops and is like, what's in the bag? And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I got to take this bag in there. And he's like, okay. I'm like, and I love, how the fuck did that work? Even I'm like, it's just kind of like, okay, if you're doing something, it must be something, I don't know. Why is it something so simple work? So I love that he was so not into this, that he's literally throwing out. I love that they even showed it too, like, obviously from a distance, but you could just see it falling from his mouth, and he's vomiting. So, goes downstairs, gets scared the moment he sees the thing, because it's like, oh, no, not another kaiju. I'm like, I love how you're saying it like you were directly involved. Yes, you were, but you were in a different country, separated by thousands of miles, and, like, you weren't in person. It's like, that kaiju was all the way there, and you were here, like... It's not the same thing. And in this case, I'll give it to you. You're in front of this kaiju, but it's like, oh, another kaiju. It's like, you didn't have to deal with the last kaiju. That's why I'm like, but I guess it's like, I was partially connected to it, so it's like, no, I'm not about to deal with another kaiju, so. just as he's leaving, Larry stops him and is like, yo, why does that human do that with his beard? And like Chris can't help but laugh. I'm like, oh, it's coming out. This is the worst thing. And then he brought it up what it was about. I was like, and it ended up being the most heartbreaking thing. He's like, I did it because I thought it would get women's attention because I've never had a girlfriend. You're like, oh, dude. And he's having to spill this embarrassing secret. And as the more it goes on, you can see like how much Chris starts feeling more. He's like, oh, cracking jokes before. He was even smiling before. Now he feels like such an asshole because it's like, oh, for him, this meant the most thing to him. He's like, he cheapened out on what he was using. So, and he's like, no one actually noticed. So he kind of thought like, no one's going to notice. Everything's fine because no one said anything until Peacemaker kept making jokes about it over and over and over again. And all Larry had to say was like, yeah, humans are pretty pathetic, aren't they? And I was like, oh, you poor bastard. And he's like, yes, okay, now everybody knows my secret. So, luckily, he was able to get away from the mob of butterflies after him because the sun, which I love that she drops it at first. She's like, my hands are sweaty. So they activate it, take down some people, and the like barn is starting to come crumbling down. Do it about 4 times. All right, time to get to it. As Adebayo, you have to stay behind because if something happens, you have to be you're our only hope. Which John's like, then what the fuck am I? And then the theme music kicks in, and they proceed to do some badass. That whole action sequence was so fucking dope. It's so interesting because like they've always made the point, like once again, like it wouldn't like when we originally got the behind the scenes stuff at. What was it? Was it DC Fandom of last year we got it? About when the first stuff dropped about the Suicide Squad, and John Cena was like, oh yeah, they were talking about Peacemaker as like a douchebag Captain America. When he pulled out his shield, I was like, whoa, okay, we're really going there. He didn't do the whole thing. He did it a little bit, but it was like basically he threw the shield up at one point in time and shot it and made it like go into a dude's neck. I was like, that's some sick shit, dude. That's pretty, that like them locking and loading and just like, that was just like such an amazing like choreographed scene and so gory, so bloody, like just slicing and blasting through people like no one else's business. So I was scared for a moment. Like I was like, do you think they would actually kill like Hardcore and Vigilante at the end because both of them got shot? I was like, yo! I mean, because look at Vigilante. He's still jacked up from the previous thing because he obviously hasn't had time to shift, like change suits or anything. It's still like just as jacked up from the grenade going off. Plus he gets shot, falls over. Like Hardcore gets it twice, but even going down still, bang, bang, taking people out. And so it's up to Adebayo, and she's just kind of like, got to step into it. And John's like, what are you going to do? And she's like, I was made for this. Goes Max Payne is immediately where my brain went, but I'm like, John Wick / Max Payne, but she killed that shit, dude. That was some slick, amazing stuff. I'm like, I don't think even Amanda Waller, like, I mean, maybe in like, I don't know if she's ever been that character in the comics. Like the boom, 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 like bam, shoot it up, like skillful, like fighter. I don't know. Like I've always known her as like the queen, the bee's knees, the top of the food chain, like barking out orders. But I've never known her. I don't know if she's ever been an active agent at any point in time. Maybe in her younger years. Maybe I never know. I've never seen any, because most things that ever use Amanda Waller is when she's just being Amanda Waller, like top of food chain, like I said, the queen barking out orders. So, so I'm also like, man, Adebayo, like, because then also you wouldn't have expected that from her, but I guess it's like, yeah, it's time to nut up or shut up, so I got to do my thing. But I was legitimately scared that Hardcore was going to die, dude. And especially I love how they, like, around, like, when she fell backwards and she was, like, coughing. Like, I love how they did that where the music was, like, kind of getting distorted, too. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch editing-wise. But luckily, Adebayo was getting to grip. I love that twist where it was actually Goff, or rather Sophie, that got to him first, and that ends up in a little bit of a tussle. And then you have Adebayo, using the human tornado, and John. I was about to say John. Peacemaker was like, "No, don't do it," and she completely misses. I was like, and he's like, "I told her not to use that one." I was like, I love that it wasn't like an instant, like, oh, she did, like, oh, make these great sacrifices. Like, no, she missed the first time. I love it. But then Sophie was like, no, let me show you something. And I was like, yes. When we finally got to that point where she was like, I'm going to explain to you what I explained to Judo Master, I'm like, thank you. Because I brought it up previously. I was like, we never found out what it is because Judo Master was saying, like, the butterflies aren't what you think they are. But obviously Adebayo shot him, so we don't know what that context was. Now we do. So it turns out, obviously they came here because, right, they needed a planet that could sustain them. Water and air, granted that couldn't feed them, so like the cow is here. And so she explains that she wanted Peacemaker's help because what they are trying to do is what he symbolizes. He symbolizes in doing whatever it takes for the greater peace. It's all for the ends justify the means. It's all for the greater good. Because she made a vow, just like he made a vow when his brother died, to like make every death count. She made a vow to basically lead this world in the right direction because she realized like every little thing in this world, your world is following the same path our world is, so we're trying to lead you in the right path. Like no matter how much death has to be, you know, how many lives have to be sacrificed, in the end, it's for the greater good because we're trying to point your planet in the right direction. Myrn didn't like what we were doing because what we were doing wasn't about power. It was about saving this planet. We want to make our own while also making sure that you guys are alive long enough to enjoy it as well. So it's a greater good for everyone. And so she's asking him, because it's like, right, I tried to explain it to you, but she's like, I talked to you, thank you for all those times you were nice to me, you fed me and everything. And she like touches his like face and was like, I even tried to tell you. And then he was like, the peace sign. I was like, that's what that was about. Because I was like, that's horseshit, isn't it? Like once like that after I was like, oh, that makes that peace sign horseshit. But it was like, no. That in actuality, that was kind of what she was trying to explain to him even back then. So Chris has a choice, like, are you going to help these people? Because it's like, right, because they are in their own way trying to help. It's for the greater good. Just like you make sacrifices, by killing people, so do they. So, but when the time comes, he has Adebayo, he's like, activate human torpedo. She shoots into the cow. He kills Locke, and then he kills Sophie. But he headshots Locke, but not Sophie. And then later on we see the butterfly, like, gets out. So she just lets him, because it's like, right, like, because I do respect you, so I don't want you to just die. Like, you will eventually die because you will starve, but it is what it is. So it's like, he felt bad enough to let her stay alive and not immediately kill her. So I thought that was kind of interesting, like, the bond they had, so... gets out of Bio, who's just covered in guts and stuff. So I was like, let's get out of here. Picks up Hardcore. I'm like, is she going to be okay? I mean, John is taking care of her. And so they all walk away, and I'm like, wow. And the way, like, Vigilante came out of nowhere, I was like, did he get infected? Because luckily, Hardcore almost did, but luckily, Adebayo, like, grabbed him and shot that butterfly before it could. So I thought that was interesting. But other than that, I was scared for a moment. I was like, well, to be fair, he had his helmet on the entire time, but it's just like him springing up like nothing's wrong made me go, what is up with that? And then the Justice League shows up, and I'm like, okay. I was like, okay, you're doing like the, like you're keeping it like them in the shadows and stuff. Because I saw the electricity, I was like, oh, the Flash, right? But then like he's like, oh, thanks for being late. Like, go fuck a fish or something like that. And then it turns out it's Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller. Because he's like, oh, I hate that rumor. And then Barry's like, it's not a rumor. He's like, fuck you, Barry. I was like, I get the Superman thing and maybe just Gal Gadot, like, scheduling and stuff like that. But I was like, for them to have even done that, I was like, that's good. As you were able to do that, I'm happy. I love that you were able to because you are able to do that. You could, it could have just been easy just to completely keep them in the shadows, but at least you were like, you did it at first and be like, oh, that sucks. And then you were like, nope, it's Jason Momoa and, Ezra Miller. So I'm like, that's fucking wild, dude. Luckily, they were able to get Hardcore and John, obviously, to the hospital. And also, it's like, you need to get checked out, too. Vigilante's like, no, I don't. I'm fine. Just need a little rest. Falls over, and they're like, okay. But I did love the heart-to-heart that Peacemaker and Adebayo had. And she's like, I am sorry. And he's like, no, like, I know. And, she says she wants to go and make things right, and I love the whole thing of like, don't tell V, but after Eagly, you're my second BFF. I was like, oh, was like, yes, that's so cute. I was like, hell yes. I was like, that's awesome. I'm so glad. So that was awesome. And I wasn't expecting that. She just straight up goes on TV and brings it all up. Task Force X, her mom, this and that. And she just blows. And then just like, because we didn't see her, like, you know, it might have been like a last minute thing that they were able to get Viola Davis for. But I love that. It's like, she's just like watching TV like, what the fuck? So what that means in the future, I don't know. Like, whatever she does ain't going to be the government secret it's been up until now. So, what does that mean for her and Adebayo? Adebayo's probably like, my mom sucks, so I'm not going to worry about it. She can't be allowed to get away with all the terrible stuff that she's kind of done. Especially because Peacemaker's going down and she said this all. It's like, no. Like, I see him for the good guy that he is. Because even she had asked, like, what... I heard what Goff said, like... Because he was like, do you think I killed the world? And it's like, no, but you put it back in our hands instead of our bug overlord. So, but why didn't you side with him? And he was like, because I knew that if I did, they would have hurt you to make me do it. So, which is sweet, kind of going back to the vigilante getting tortured thing. He tried to be like, oh, it don't matter. But even during the torture thing, he's putting up that front, but you could tell it was bothering him seeing vigilante torture. And he's like, he cares about all of them. They are his friends. And so it's like, right, I didn't want to see any of you get hurt or tortured because I knew they would do that. Goff already made that point beforehand to try and get me to do what he wanted. So I thought that was sweet. And Hardcore's okay. Even that sweet moment of like, you know, Peacemaker came to see her and she's like, I've heard that you haven't left, like you've been here like for days. And they're like, yeah. And the tear rolls down her face and they touch her. I'm like, oh, that's yes. But it's like, where's this go from here between the two of you? Adebayo returns to her dogs and her wife. Vigilante, both him and Peacemaker's names kind of got cleared to some extent, and we just see him jump out the hospital window because it's like, yeah, I'm not going to worry, because he also doesn't want his secret identity kind of out there, I guess, so he's just kind of like bailing. So that's his exit for now. John goes back to that prison and like he's doing something, but he made sure to keep the picture from that Hardcore took. Was it not last episode, but episode 6, that picture she took? Or was that... No, that was episode 5 she took that picture. So, I thought that was pretty dope. He's just looking at his motivation like, yeah, my friends. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet. So, we have that Hardcore going through physical therapy to recover after everything. But then we have the very end where we have Peacemaker... and he runs it like he sees the Golf again and actually gives him the last of the slurm that they drank. And so it's like, right, this is the last of it, buddy. So it's like, it's almost poetic in a sense, like for them to be where they are. And then all of a sudden his dad sits beside him and they're like, oh, you thought this was over? It's like, no, I'm never leaving you. Like, especially, regardless of everything, your guilt for killing me. Like, I think he found peace with, like, everything between him and his brother because it is on his dad. But everything with his dad, that causes, you know, it's like his dad's going to be taking up some rent space inside of his head for a while. So that's definitely going to have to be something. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised because, I mean, you didn't properly deal with it. You just killed him with a poison dart in the woods. So it's like, of course, that wasn't like, you know, that was a metaphorical dealing with, but not fully emotionally and mentally dealing with it. So that's going to be a whole thing. But I do appreciate that Eagly dropping them off a present, you know, so, and that's where things end, so. Peacemaker was renewed for a second season, which I'm so excited to hear that and know that. Makes you wonder, okay, so where the hell is a season 2 going to take us? I wonder will there be anything in between? Because I know James Gunn apparently is working on other DC projects as well. So will it be anything that ties in? Because I think he had plans for like stuff related to Peacemaker, like not Peacemaker necessarily the character, but even stuff from the show to do like spin-offs from and stuff like that. So I don't know what else he's got planned, but I'm excited for whatever it is that he does. I'm curious what other references, what other stuff they're going to drop. I mean, what the next mission is going to be. You stop an alien invasion, essentially. So what's next for our team, especially now that Amanda Waller's been called out? Like, are they just going to naturally be like, no, we're going to be a team that's just not government. Well, I was like, I was about to say governmentally sanctioned, but it's like you're technically never government sanctioned because you were always supposed to be like under the radar. So I don't know. I'm also surprised we walked away with only Mern dying. That still sucks. Granted, it was never the real Mern, it was the butterfly Mern, but still, you wish. But sad thing is, it was always going to be this way anyway, because he was ready to sacrifice himself to save this world and stop them from this world being beaten by them. But also, the whole, he would have eventually starved too, like Goff. Not unless there ends up being another food source, but that cow was the last of it, so eventually even Goff is going to die. So, not unless something changes, but I think that is, that's the last of the stuff, and Goff's the last of his species, potentially, that's still here. Well, there's probably, like, others maybe are scattered around the country that are still, but they're eventually going to starve out, too, so... Not quite sure what to expect from a season 2. Like, I mean, once again, probably just more crazy shenanigans from this team of misfits. But what that necessarily looks like, who the villain's gonna be, is it gonna be a large scale conspiracy like this? Is it gonna be smaller scale? What to expect? I don't know. I know it's probably just going to be just as bloody, crazy, wild, and fucked up as this, and I'm here for it. So I'm excited to see ultimately what James Gunn has in store for us when it comes to season 2. These characters returning, as well as what new characters we might get introduced to as well. Those we know and those we don't know, because we did see Judo Master at the end, so he's still out there. Granted, he felt heartbroken because he thought like, oh man, you're going to change the world for the better. So is he going to be like coming after them because it's like, oh, you stopped the world from being in a better direction? Like, is he not necessarily a big antagonist, but maybe he might return in an antagonistic role again? But once again, we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.